Hey, good morning. Welcome to Stage Door Theater Podcast, hosted by a couple of average guys. You got me today, Kyle, and we're with Ron is joining me. How you doing, Ron?
Oh,
that good?
Mama. Oh, baby.
We have I always say this. I said, we have a special guest, they're always special, I feel like. But today we have our awesome continuing series spotlighting people from the area that have gone out and done some really cool things. And today we have Brady Miller. Brady Miller, Ron, you're the one who turned me on to this guy.
Yeah, Brady Miller went to Ohio Northern with my son. They sang and danced together on stage.
And now he's doing some big stuff. But
Yeah.
we're going to let him tell us all the cool things that he's doing.
Hello.
Wow, we only got one ring and you answered right away. You're amazing already. I already love you. So,
I try.
Yeah, it's great having you on, Brady. I've never actually met you in real life, but Ron has.
Yeah, this is Ron Matnick, Tyler's dad.
Yeah. Hey, how's it going?
Yeah. So that's already a cool thing is that Ron has actually got to see you perform.
Yes.
Some might say that's lucky. Some might have to apologize to.
No. I'm sure that's not the case. I'm sure because you're kind of a big deal right now, aren't you? So where are you at right now, Brady?
I'm in my apartment in New York City right now.
Oh, you live in New York City.
I sure do. Yeah.
Wow, you're like a real pro.
I guess. Well, we're trying.
So what we want to do here on these spotlights is we always want to talk about, where you came from, how you got interested in doing theater, who gave you the inspiration, basically like start when you're at the age of 4 and then work your way up until your awesomeness right now. But the first thing that we always want to do is tell us what it is that you have done that you are the most proud of or what people would know you for right now.
Oh gosh. It's I think people always have their own kind of definition of what constitutes success and
right.
what is worthy of being proud of, and some might say like it's the most recent thing, or there's always kind of the definitive thing I think for people. So mine I think is what I'm most proud of is what I did right after college was the national tour of 42nd Street. That was, I think, that will always be the thing I'm most proud of because it was the thing that I got to do right after I graduated, and it was a year of work, and it was traveling for work, which was something I had never done before graduating because I'm from Findlay. So, and I went to school at Ohio Northern, and so I think before touring, I had never been further west than St. Louis, which is not west.
No, but that's funny. We have a connection already, you and I, because when I was in high school and doing stuff like my furthest west, St. Louis. That's the same.
Yeah.
I went and saw the Arch. I saw the Mississippi River, and I was like, "Oh, look at this river! This is like a real river, not the Maumee River. Holy moly!"
Exactly. So my sights and my senses were just kind of on an all-time high because we rehearsed here in New York for that tour, and then the first thing we did was for tech rehearsal was fly to Yakima, Washington. So, and when we flew out there, we flew to Seattle and then drove across the state of Washington. And so to land and be in the Pacific Northwest and just get to see like the true, like, you hear about it, but to see it is like the lush, green, like beautiful Pacific Northwest, and then see the mountains and then see the landscape change from the West Coast all the way to like Eastern Washington State. It was just so incredible. So like, and then to do a year of discovering what the country has to offer, I think was just I'll always look back on that experience and be like, go little Brady, go. I had no idea what I was doing. And I was so nervous, but I made a true family on that contract. And
that's amazing. And you went from one coast, just get on a plane, go all the way to the other coast. And so you saw the whole city through a window at least, or the whole country through a window for a while. And you're like, wow, okay, let's start on the other side of the country for some reason.
And just a kid from Findlay.
Yep.
All right, so now we want to go back to when you were just a babe, all the way back to when you were a tiny dink, and when you started doing this, and tell us how you got started. How did you begin your journey into the world of theater and being a professional now?
Yeah, so I started. I've always played music, so like starting in around like 4th grade, I took up violin, and so I had like a true like want to do that. I remember sitting in the back seat of my parents' Jeep Wrangler at the time, and there's like a Dixie Chicks song on the radio.
Of course, the Dixie Chicks are from Findlay, so it's playing, man.
Exactly. And I remember sitting in the back seat. I don't know. We were like on Tiffin Avenue of all places,
Yeah.
and it's so vivid in my brain, remembering like playing the air violin, and my mom turning to my dad and being like, "I think we got to get him a violin. Let's just do it." And so you start, and at least in our school system, is fourth grade you can start in orchestra, fifth grade you start in band.
Yeah.
And I had always thought like maybe I would pick up a band and an instrument too, but violin just really stuck for a while. So I loved music. So then,
So is Findlay's not the biggest town, obviously, but it's not the smallest town either.
Right.
Is it just Findlay Elementary? Is it, because I know it's Finday High School. Did you have like a name like Lincoln Elementary or something like that you were at?
I went to Lincoln Elementary School.
Get the heck out! Are you serious? That's so
Yeah,
weird. I just randomly threw that out there because I went to Lincoln Elementary School, not in Findlay, in Tiffin. And I grew in Tiffin, and you were on Tiffin. Man, we are like
Connected.
two peas in a pod here. I'm telling you.
These Ohio towns, they get really creative with their names. But,
I guess so.
So I went to Lincoln Elementary School, but we have a ton of different elementary schools in Findlay. So
Okay.
Lincoln, I think at the time,
All the presidents, probably. Lincoln, Washington, Kennedy.
Washington, yes, all of them.
Yeah.
And I think at the time, Lincoln was the only one that was K through 5 in one building. Otherwise, it's like you would go to like a primary and then like a secondary elementary school, and then move on to middle school. We had 3 middle schools at the time. Now I think we have 2. And then, just the one Finday High School. So it was like smaller up into bigger groups, up into just like the biggest high school. So
Gotcha. So you're playing a violin and your mom in the back seat, an air violin, not even a real violin, because that's extra cool playing an air violin. And then your mom said, maybe we should put an actual instrument in his hand.
Yeah. And it was kind of like, you get the theater bug, which I did eventually get, but I think I got the music bug first. And so I grew up across the street from the church that I grew up going to.
Mm-hmm.
So my mom thought maybe it's a good idea, like we can get him in the children's choir, just to like get, like acclimated to hanging out with other kids. And so that's where I met my best friend for life. Her name is Lucy Anders. She's also an actor.
Shout out to Lucy.
Shout out to Lucy. And she, lives here in the city with her and her friends. And then her uncle also is Phil Reno, a Tiffin native. So it's all kind of in the family now. But so I met Lucy through this children's choir that her mom was the music director of at the church. And so she, I guess, one day came to my mom and was like, Brady can actually kind of sing. He should really start, looking into if he really likes this. And Lucy's father, Michael, was the head of the theater department at the University of Findlay.
Oh, wow.
They were doing a production of Shenandoah, the musical. And Lucy's mom was like, if Brady really likes singing, we need a Towns boy to be in the ensemble of this show at the university if he'd be interested.
Yeah, Towns boy number 27. We just need one. That's awesome.
Right.
Awesome.
And it was truly like you always hear the stories. Like I was hooked and never looked back. That was probably in February. I was like 10.
Nice.
And
Does your mom or dad have like any background in this stuff? Because the fact that they're like pushing the arts on you, not pushing, but like are aware of the arts and are like, hey, maybe he should do this. Do they have a history of any of that? Do you know?
Not really. My mom grew up playing piano, and my dad
got some.
But like grew up playing it, but never really like played it while I was growing up.
Yeah.
And my dad is not musical at all. He can sing, but he's not, he wasn't like a part of any sort of community with music ever. Right. My grandmothers were a little bit more, I think, when they were younger, they were interested in music. And I guess my grandma always said she would do the operettas, as she called them, at school. But no one really in my family was very musically inclined or theater driven or interested really. So I think I had very supportive parents that just kind of listened to whatever I wanted to do.
That's amazing. I only ask all these things because we just had Findlay Playhouse on. Fort Findlay Playhouse was just on. We had them talking to them. And I had a vested interest in them because I'm from that area too. I'm from, my address is Fostoria. Is where I grew up, and I went to Lakota. And it's the same kind of thing. I'm always very intrigued by the smaller town people like getting involved in this kind of stuff. So I just want to know if there was any kind of like, your parents are from Seattle and they came here and they were always in theater and they just happened to work for Marathon or something. It's like,
No, totally. Yeah, no, my family is just from Findlay, and well, I guess my dad's from Van Buren, and then my
Even
mom's
bigger, Van Buren. Exactly.
exactly.
So
Exactly.
did you do high school shows?
Oh yeah.
Oh
So
yeah.
yeah, we
Don't
started.
jump too far ahead. So now you're playing an instrument, and we're moving on. So then you got the theater
He
bug.
got hooked.
You got hooked by doing
Yeah,
Shenandoah at the Findlay College. You said
University of Findlay.
University of
Yeah.
Findlay. Sorry, that's what I meant. Anyways, the Oilers. Yeah.
Oh, same thing. Yeah.
Yeah.
And I said earlier, I have to retract a statement. I have parents that are very supportive, and I said they'd do anything that I wanted to do, which is not at all the case.
No.
They just understood what my interests were. So like I grew up also at the same time I was playing soccer and doing gymnastics, just kind of figuring out what I
Yeah.
liked most. And yeah, so the older I got, the more it was just consistently theater. You know, I made my best friend Lucy, and we didn't even go to the same elementary school.
Very cool.
But I just stayed tied to her and her family, and they kept doing the shows, and they kept needing kids in the ensembles, and so I just kept doing it. And so it was Shenandoah, but then it was Oliver and Camelot and The Sound of Music, and then it just kind of snowballed. In Findlay, there was a company called the Findlay Light Opera Company,
Okay.
and they would do, every summer, they would do one big show at our local, like, bigger theater. And it was just local talent that would just, do a show every year. And that's just where I really fell in love. I have my fondest memories are with Finday Light Opera Company, because that's where I met all my friends. That's where I really grew into understanding what this theater community was. And, even still today, if it's the right kind of sentiment, I will always, get misty at the end of a show. But
Yeah.
back then I would stop, because I grew so connected to these casts and these friends that then I didn't go to school with, or that lived out in the county areas, and so I wouldn't get to see them that often. So
Yeah, no, a lot of people don't understand they may understand that, but a lot of people outside of this Northwest Ohio area don't quite understand that. If you live in Findlay, that it's going to take you 35 minutes to get to the next town and so forth. So if you got these kids that are living in Fostoria or living in Fremont or living in these areas that are like you and love these things and are traveling, you're going to bond with those kids.
Exactly. And so that was the case, and I just, I stuck with it. And so, yeah, I did shows in high school. I went to Finlay High School, and it just kind of kept going. And I remember still in high school, I wasn't quite sure if this is what I wanted to do for a career. Even through like my senior year, I still like signed up by choice to take an anatomy class because I really liked biology. So I was like, maybe I like anatomy, and I loved it. And I had the best teacher for that class, and I think that's what Findlay's school system is good at, is really ensuring that everyone has ample opportunity to really explore anything that interests them, especially in our high school system. I got that, at least. But
Very
I still
cool.
got
So you were saying you were in the chorus members. Is this all for like the University of Findlay? Like you just kept being in their shows over and over and over again?
Yeah, so like the Finlay Light Opera Company that would put on shows every summer. Even I think they disbanded around the time I was like in the middle of high school, but I did it all the way through middle school and up through high school, and then local shows as well. So like at the Fort Finlay Playhouse, I did some shows growing up, and one of my favorite shows ever, I did Honk there, and even still today, my mom's like, God, Honk, I know it's like a kid's show, but it still is one of my favorites that you've ever done. Back when I was in like 7th grade. But
it's actually a pretty good show. It's not bad.
It's so good. The music's great.
It's not a bad show, but I think a lot of people, they just hear Honk, they're like, what? It's like, no, go watch it.
Exactly.
some of these shows you may think are not high caliber, but Honk, because when I first heard Honk, I was kind of snooty. I was like, come on, Honk, that's got to be what a little kid show. Oh, it's actually not that bad.
Oh, yeah. So, yeah, I was very lucky that I had enough community theater that like when I wasn't in school during the year, there was something going on in the summer that I could do. And I just, got to do more and more and more and meet more and more people. And then I decided finally in high school around my junior year that I was gonna, make this a career. So
who told you that? Who said you were good? Who told you were good? You're good. You should go and do this. There's got to be somebody, like a music teacher or a director or somebody, right? It wasn't Lucy.
Yeah,
you can't just believe Lucy.
I had a really good support system in high school in the music department as well. So I stayed playing violin through all of high school, and I got to use that. So where I ended up going to school, I got to use that as like a scholarship as well, and be in the symphony in college. But I had
At Ohio
Kevin
Northern,
Mann.
you were in the Symphony of Ohio Northern?
I was for 2
Wow.
years. Yeah, it just got to be too time consuming in school
Yeah.
because by the time junior year came around, it was like, okay, now we have to like think about career. And I
Yeah.
didn't have time to devote
Playtime's
to.
over, man. Time to get ready. Yeah.
Yeah. So, but yeah, in high school, I was very lucky. I had Kevin Manley and Craig Van Retterham were the two vocal department heads. I think Kevin is still there. Craig now works for the Marathon Performing Arts Center in Findlay, which is now the new theater.
Yeah.
But yeah, Kevin and Craig, even through middle school, I remember Kevin was like, he took my mom aside, I believe, and was like, Brady should really come to Central because they had like a music program that I think was just a little bit ahead of the other middle schools in the area.
Gotcha.
And Kevin taught at Central, and he was like, we would really love to have Brady come to Central. I was technically not in that school district.
Oh, he totally recruited you. That's what happened there, huh?
Yeah.
He's like, I'm
Violation.
the teacher over here. He should come over here. Heck with this other middle school. I want him.
Yeah.
Good for him.
It was great. And I was very, I was lucky to have teachers who believed in me. So
Yeah.
I went to Central, and that's where I got to really, feel like I loved music. And then went to high school, and Kevin then also moved to the high school and was the high school choir director, and he also directs the show choir there as well. And then Craig, I grew up doing shows with, and then he was the freshman vocal teacher and ran like the freshman show choir and the freshman choral as well.
Man.
So but they were both just really supportive and really cheered me on to do my best. And so
That's awesome. Findlay still has a really good music program there. I don't know if you've been following them since you've become a big deal, but they are really still good there, though. They have the Boingers that do the band that goes around.
Oh,
Did they
yeah.
have that when you were there?
Oh yeah, the Boingers are the backup band for the show choir. So
Yes, and the
they're
show
going
choir's
strong.
no joke. I was like, holy smokes, this is a show choir?
So,
These guys need to be in all the musicals. I was very impressed with what they were doing.
so
I know.
what about dance? Was that a part of your upbringing?
That's where I stray from what people I work with now, kind of what the norm is. I always hear my friends say men always have it easier because our bodies are just the way choreography is typically built on like a male's body or a male presenting person's body. Like it's not as always as flashy with having to be as flexible and whatnot. So if you have a choreographic brain, sometimes it just comes easy to you. So I did not grow up going to a dance studio by any means.
Okay.
I would do shows, and sometimes there was choreography in it, and we would go to a studio, and local studio teachers would choreograph these shows. But I never had formal true training in dance.
Yeah, it was just everything you were doing in the theater. It was whatever the choreography was for that particular show is what you did.
Exactly. And it just made my brain. I was like, okay, you want me to go over here and step on this beat? Got it. And then show choir, actually, vending into that conversation, is really where I got my first taste of true dance training.
So you were in the Findlay Show Choir that just wins nationals now.
Yeah. Yeah, I was.
Nice.
I was. And so that's where I really learned. Findlay at least used to be known for every show in the show choir. Every year they would end with a tap number. So I learned how to tap dance through show choir, and I really learned how to partner well in show choir.
Nice.
And I think learning that, as a 15, 16-year-old, you're learning how your body works to
That's a
lift
definite advantage. Again, especially since I've seen what they're doing in the show choir there with the partner work. It's whoa, that's not something that young people are doing too much. Exactly.
It's a very, very helpful tool that even still today in auditions here in the city, I sometimes callbacks are a partnering call, and it just comes easily to some people, and some people it just does not make sense, and it's about trust. But again, it's that's a muscle that I think if you learn it when you're a teenager, then you understand how to how to communicate to your partner, and it's a really valuable skill to have. So
yeah, and when you're young like that, a lot of people are maybe a little bit more awkward in general. I have to dance with somebody else and I have to do these things, and you get that crap out of the way. And now you just got it. Now that you're an adult and more mature, you're like, why would I care? But at the time when you're younger, you are like, I'm a little sensitive still. I go to school with all these people.
And so now it's time to choose a college.
Yeah.
Yeah, you decided I'm going to do this for a career, and everybody loved you and supported you and said, go for it.
Exactly. So,
Good.
and again, thank you to my parents for, driving me to these colleges to audition in the first place, because it's not a, so yeah, it was, I still, I always wanted to double major, and I wasn't sure what exactly I wanted the second major to be.
Anatomy, you said, right? Didn't you want to be an anatomy major also?
Well, I thought about it.
Oh, really? Okay.
But I think going forward, I was like, there's no way I can make theater and like a science degree ever work. There's just no way, too much. But I was like, something in the business world or like in the marketing world. So I liked my creative side of my brain. So I was like, maybe I'll be in marketing. So I applied. I only went to 5 colleges. I applied to 5 schools. And I think, if I remember correctly, the process was you had to be accepted. A lot of the time, you had to be accepted to the university first, based on academics, and then audition for the theater programs. So
it is still that same way now. So
yeah, and so it was a long, tricky process. But I didn't know anything about anything. So like in terms of like what schools were good and what was the best program, or like other than the University of Michigan. And that is because another Findlay native is Gavin Creel, who is now a Tony Award winner.
Yep.
And he was also in the Findlay Show Choir. And so like I knew about Michigan because that's where Gavin went. And so
yeah, you're like, well, it must be good. He went there.
Exactly. And so I always idolized him, and I still do growing up. It's so
of course
neat.
You should, because he's really good. It's like you want to strive to be into that group. Exactly.
And we had the same teachers. We grew up doing a lot of the same stuff, knowing the same people, even though he's 18 years older than me. We never knew each other, but we know a lot of the same people, which was really nice, even through college.
He was probably driving on Tiffin Avenue also and had the same moment you did.
Oh, yeah. So, so auditions came around, and I, did some research, found some programs that I thought were, feasible for like especially my dance training. Because I could dance to a certain degree, but I didn't know anything about ballet, or I didn't know anything about jazz dance. I didn't know, the sort of things. So I was a little bit limited with like being realistic. 1, what schools I could double major at that would allow it, and 2, what school I could realistically actually get into, knowing my talent level at that age.
Right.
So I applied to 5 schools. I, of course, tried Michigan, but Michigan is also, the cream of the crop.
It's Michigan, exactly. Right.
It's always been that way, and for great reason. And clearly Michigan did not work out for me. But I auditioned at a few places, and in fact ended up going to Ohio Northern University, where it also just so happens that Kevin Manley, who was my show choir director in high school, his wife was the head of the theater department. I don't believe she is anymore. I think there has now been changes in that department now. But so that was one of 2 schools that I got into. Of the
Is that
5
how you heard about Ohio Northern, was because of Kevin's wife? I mean, how did you know, like you said, you didn't know anything about anything?
He could walk to Ohio Northern from Finland.
Exactly.
But I didn't know Ohio Northern was a school when I was down there. So I didn't know, like, how would you have known? Like, did Kevin guide you a little bit on, like, some options?
I think so. From what I remember, I'm sure he, talked it up. And Kirsten, his wife, also had come to see the shows in Findlay that I was a part of, and Kevin had music directed some of those shows that I was in back in my childhood and whatever. So I had known who they were for a long time, and then once high school came around and I started thinking about this more.
I'm old. I'm 50, so I didn't hear of anything back then. There was no internet. There was no nothing. So if it wasn't literally right next to me, I didn't Ohio Northern, Ada, Ohio. I've never heard of it before. So the only thing I'd known about Ada back then was every time they'd show the stinking football games, they'd say they made the footballs in Ohio. I'm like, oh, okay, that's what I knew. So Ohio Northern was not on my radars, but it turns out it's a really good program.
It's a fantastic program, and I was, looking back, I am so glad, beyond glad. Ohio Northern was the perfect choice for me to go to, because it is a small program. It's very small, and that's a turnoff to a lot of people, but it's also a huge asset to a lot of people, including myself, because since I didn't have the dance training going into college, but I had great professors who really cared
Right.
Because it was such a small school, if I was 20 minutes late to my next class, I could be like, hey, sorry, I was, working on XYZ. And they'd be like, oh, it's no big deal. And I really got to, make it the program I wanted to get out of it. And so I would stay after classes and ask, questions about certain terminology in choreography and in dance. But also I had great voice lessons and great voice faculty who really have a strong basis in classical singing that I think is a really great foundation for anything else. If you can sing classically and sing it well and healthily, I think you can really kind of sing anything. It's just a tool belt at that point. And so
yeah, Tyler and Maddie had a similar viewpoint on the fact that the smallness of the school, the intimacy of the school was an asset as well.
Yeah.
It was they were very invested in what you guys were doing.
They could work one-on-one with Broadway people that came in.
Yeah, but the professors themselves, you weren't just a number to them.
Exactly. And it was clear that each of us were chosen for a very specific reason, and we were all there with a strong purpose, but also in an environment that we were able to, nourish the other parts that needed some help growing. And it was always supported. And the student groups as well were always just so kind, and everyone kind of, helped each other out. Of course, there was moments. It's college, it's theater.
Of course.
Crazy, but
it is drama. Exactly.
It's drama.
But you learned hardcore dancing more when you got into college. Then is that what you were saying?
Yeah. So I got my first ballet class when I was 18. First tap classes, first every type of dance class with a true teacher and a set of mirrors on the floor and the proper dress and the proper garments. That's where I started dancing. Dancing was in college.
Yeah. That's amazing considering the fact that your first job out of college was a huge dance show.
Yeah. And so, again, a testament to
shout out on you.
Because our tap and jazz teacher, her name is Brenda Hoyt-Brackman, she is the best person in the entire world.
Wow.
She loves every single student of hers individually and for their hearts. She is the most kind, giving human being in the world. And so I went to this flash forward to my senior year of college. In order to get jobs, often there are you could call them cattle calls or unified auditions where theaters from around a certain area or around the country will come. Everyone that's a representative from all these theaters sit in a giant auditorium, and you, the actor, prepare a 90-second combo of a song and a monologue. And you audition in front of this giant room in front of thousands of reps of different theaters and whatever. And then later on in the day, you find out where you got callbacks for. And so my senior year, I went to what's called UPDAs. It's in Memphis. And that's more it's only for seniors in college and then professionals. So people who have
UPTA, is that?
Yes.
Okay.
Yep.
Let's make sure I heard you right. UPTA.
Yeah. So I went there. My parents so sweetly drove me all the way to Memphis.
Oh my gosh, you got the best parents ever.
I could talk for hours about them. So I went to UPDAs, did my audition, got some callbacks, and one of them was for the national tour of 42nd Street.
Oh, is that all?
I know.
One of them.
And so the callback, though, was in New York City, where I had only been on high school trips. I had never been as a college student. I had never been by myself.
And you were like, Mom, Dad, I need a ride again.
Literally. So I flew by myself for the first time to New York. And the week leading up to that callback, I went to Brenda, my professor, and I was just like, hey, it's been about a year since I've had a tap class here.
Oh boy.
Could you just meet with me one day and just throw some tap steps at me so I can get back into the mindset of learning on the spot? And she was like, sure. And I had a crappy pair of tap shoes. And she was, helping, and she was like, you're getting the steps, but they just don't sound good. And I think it's your shoes. And she was like, what size are you? And I was like, 8.5. She was like, I think my flat tap shoes might fit you. You should just try them on. Just try them on. And of course, Brenda's the leggiest, tallest, gorgeous woman in the world. And of course, her shoes fit me. And so I do the same like little tap steps that she's throwing at me. And she's like, you sound way better in these shoes. I want you to take my shoes to New York for this callback.
Man.
The only thing I ask is that you don't change the shoelaces because they're my like lucky shoelaces. But wear these. And I was like, okay. So I went to New York for this callback for 42nd Street. And I flew in on a Tuesday, I believe. And the callback was that day. And then I was expecting to fly back Wednesday morning because I was also in rehearsals for a show at school. I had class to get to. I didn't get anything excused. So I go to this callback, and then they make some cuts, and they keep me, and they make some more cuts, and they keep keeping me, and keep keeping me, all the way to the end, where it's just me and one other guy. And I'm just like, what is happening? How is this real? And it's with Randy Skinner, who, if you don't know, is a Tony-nominated choreographer who literally for 42nd Street, the revival back in the early 2000s. He's incredible. He's prolific as in the tap world, especially. And I'm just like, it's me and this other kid who I don't know, tap dancing for Randy Skinner. I don't know what I'm doing. How is this possible? It's crazy. And so then Randy asks if I can stay until the following Monday. It's Tuesday right now.
You got to stay a whole week.
I was like, a whole week? Oh my gosh, what? Because he wanted me to come to the final callbacks. And in the meantime, he was like, also come to my class that I'm teaching on Saturday so I can see how you work in that environment. So it was just a lot.
Yeah.
Yeah, and your your dance teacher needed her shoes back.
Yeah.
Exactly. So it's, at this point, it's like 10 o'clock at night. I make panicked phone calls. I cancel my flight. I call my professors. They're like, of course, you have to stay. Thankfully, everyone was so understanding. So I stay in New York, not knowing where I am, having to go buy clothes because I didn't pack for a week.
Right, you brought a pair of pants.
Yeah. So it was crazy, crashing on friends' couches, make it through callbacks. And then
Wow.
Once I think I had to go in maybe 2 more times for callbacks. And then I went in on Monday. And I come back, though, to Ohio, and I bleed right into our spring break. And so we had another week of just like time away from school. And in that time, I found out that I booked the tour. So I got to come back to Ohio Northern and go back to Brenda and hand her shoes that she lent me to then also say, I found out I got it.
And how hard were you crying?
I was just kind of trembling and just so excited to tell her. And of course, she immediately started sobbing. And then Brenda, being the most incredible woman that she is.
I'm already crying right now, dude. So, I mean,
she pushes her shoes back to me. She's like, I feel like you should keep these. And I was like, Brenda, that is not happening. I cannot keep your shoes, but I want you to just know that I booked this because of you. And,
and your lucky laces.
What's that?
And the lucky laces worked.
And the lucky laces, exactly. So it was a pretty magical experience. And it's small town kid from Ohio that didn't know anything about this and suddenly just getting the opportunity of a lifetime.
That is
a
tremendous story.
Yes.
And then when did you tell your parents? Your parents had to be like, finally, all this driving has paid off.
Yes. I mean, the minute I found out, I just lost my mind. I'm sure I called them right away. We were just overjoyed. It was incredible. So exciting.
So they only had you were going to stay in some hotel room in New York or whatever. And it was like, oh, okay, well, I guess I'm saying you were crashing on friends' couches, you said?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So it was just kind of like a crazy situation. Yeah. So I did summer stocks every summer between our school years. So we would audition for those every year as well. So I would work at smaller theaters in Ohio, and then the friends I would meet there would graduate before me and move to New York, and so I would stay with them. So it all just kind of, becomes it. You always hear it. It is such a small world, but the theater world is even more small. And you meet one person, and by proxy, 10 more at least. And so,
see, this is why we need to have you guys on. You and people like you that are from Findlay and from Fostoria and from Ada and from these places, because it becomes this like attainable goal for everybody. And you tell stories that are like insanely nothing was perfect, but it was in the end it was perfect.
Yeah, and that's how I'm learning more and more. Like everything it's so much easier to say than to remember and practice every day, but like it truly is, everything happens for a reason.
I know, it's so easy to say when it works out in the end, doesn't it?
Easy to say, but I'm still, it's a practice reminding myself that even still today of like, okay, a callback didn't go well, but that is so another door will open, because if I had taken that job, then I couldn't have done this one, or it's just, it all works somehow.
So you get the call that you're going to do this show, but you had to finish school and even be in a show at school?
Yeah, so I found out, I think it must have been late March, early April when I found out that I got the tour, and we didn't start rehearsals until August, so they cast it pretty early in the year. But it was a miracle, because I could go do my summer stock job that I already knew about and then leave there and go right to New York to start rehearsals for a tour. And yeah, I could still finish my school year, and still we were doing Drowsy Chaperone at Ohio Northern my senior year, so I got to finish that.
So you got to graduate even too.
I saw you in Drowsy. Yeah, I saw.
So it's not like you got a job on this national tour and you were going to be going into your senior year. Your timing was really impeccable.
It was the most imperfect thing ever. It truly was. Yeah, impeccable. Exactly.
Yeah, to be able to say, I get to graduate, I get to do this other summer job that I already signed a contract and agreed to also, and then I get to go on to this other national tour thing. Everything works out as planned. Mm-hmm. Exactly as I planned it.
Exactly.
Sorry, 42nd Street. You performed that at the Stranahan. What was that like?
Oh, you came to the Stranahan with 42nd Street?
We did. We were there for about, and it was insane. It was truly incredible. I couldn't have asked for a more perfect, like we keep saying, everything just kept falling into place and falling into place. So yeah, we did the Stranahan for 4 days. And I saw my first ever professional show there. I saw the national tour of Joseph, I think.
Oh, wow.
Back when I was in like 7th grade, and I was like, that's cool. And then I'm sure I saw Wicked there one time or something. And then to get to perform there was just the perfect gift to me. Like I got to, every show there were troves of people from Findlay just coming to support. And, there were a few other people in our show that were also from Ohio, from like the Youngstown area. But anytime we were in Ohio, people would make the drive, because it's not that big of a state. So
no, it sends me. I didn't know you then, because I would have been like, yes, let's go see him.
Oh yeah, and it was great because I had just graduated, so all of my schoolmates were still at Northern that were like the couple classes below me.
Right.
So they all came to see the show.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. My son Tyler came to see you with was it Silverman? What was his name? Oh. Anyway, he and Sari Yoko was a stage manager at the time. She's an Ohio Northern person.
Yeah, she's stage managing on at Wicked on Broadway right now. Yeah.
Oh, another no big deal person. Yeah.
Yes, and I got to tour with her actually. So I went to school with her, and then she was the assistant stage manager on our tour. So
on 42nd Street?
Yeah.
Wow.
So that was another magical thing of like, I graduated, I got the show, and then once I got to New York and we started rehearsals, out of nowhere, Salary was just in the rehearsal room. And I was like, what are you doing here? What? And initially she was just supposed to be like a production assistant. Like she was just going to be there for rehearsals and that was it. And then suddenly she was there for tech rehearsals in Washington. And then suddenly she was like, well, I'm coming on tour.
Wow.
So I got to just be on the road with this friend of mine that I went to school with for 2 years and then got to work with. It was just, it couldn't have been better. It was just the best.
Man, everything is coming up roses for you, isn't it? It's amazing. I love it, though. Again, I can't emphasize enough that these kinds of stories are why we want to have people like you on and to help, encourage people that it is realistic, that if you come from Findlay, Ohio, it could be happening to you, too. So
absolutely.
And then after 42nd Street, you went on there for a while, and then then you moved to New York, and you became like an even bigger deal?
I guess, yeah, thank you.
Then we found out about you, so then you must be a bigger deal. On Stage Door knows about you.
Yeah.
So 42nd Street was a full year. So I was gone from August through July, and it was amazing. So then, tour ended, and I came back here. My first ever place in New York was I sublet someone's room in the apartment of a director that was a guest director at Ohio Northern for a show I did my freshman year. So I met him when I was 19, and then became friends with him through just keeping up through social media. I posted on Facebook toward the end of our run for the tour, and I was like, I need a sublet. I need a place to live. And he responded, and he was like, hey, you should take this open room in my apartment. And it just worked out perfectly. So, yeah, I came back to New York, I think it was August of 2016.
And that's just another world, too. Not anything that we're used to hearing here in Ohio is like, come and take this room. Like, oh, yeah, that's normal in New York. You just live in this room.
So, yeah, it's very weird to get used to. And that's, if the driving to multiple colleges to audition me wasn't a stressor enough on my parents, trusting that I was safe in these people's apartments that I was subletting from in New York City was a totally different test for them.
Right. Yeah, that is a way. You don't know anybody. You're just one person in an apartment with like 6 other people probably, or 4 other people.
It was truly that quote from Annie, like $3, 2 bags, 1 me. Like I truly had a suitcase, a duffel bag, and a backpack. And that was it. That's all I owned at the time. So I sublet around for a while before I knew how to even get on a lease.
Yeah.
And just auditioned and took some classes here. And then I got, a couple months after I moved here, I got an offer to do a show out in Massachusetts that offered me my union card. Because back then, it was still a process to even become a part of the union. You had to work a certain amount of weeks.
Wait, 42nd Street wasn't union?
No, it was non-union, yeah.
Wow, what? I didn't realize a national tour would be non-union. I guess I just assumed.
Yeah. It's probably about half and half nowadays.
Okay.
Half, and then as things go longer, the more cities they've played, then typically they'll switch to a non-union contract. But I was always really proud of 42nd Street because it was a true testament. I remember when we were in Chicago, we were there for 2 weeks, which is a great length to be on a tour.
No kidding, 2 weeks in one city? Oh.
And that wasn't even our longest. We were in LA for 3 weeks, which was just a gift. But when we were in Chicago, that's where the real harsh critics are typically from,
Oh.
So our directors came out to Chicago to rehearse us, brush us up, make sure everything was tight. So then reviews came out, and I will never forget, we had the most proud director because the reviews were great, even from the harshest of critics.
Nice.
Saying you would never know this was a non-union tour. The talent is amazing. It was also just reminds me to still keep that mindset of non-union doesn't mean poor quality.
Yeah, exactly.
It's a different pay grade, but it's still a great show. So I will always say if a non-union tour comes through, still go see it because they are working their butts off and they are so talented.
Hey man, a national tour is Broadway to me, man. That's all they're all Broadway to me. It's a Broadway caliber show just going around the country.
Yeah, exactly. And that is true. That's what touring was so cool about too, is that we were bringing Broadway to people who would never get a chance otherwise to see something
100%.
like that. It was great. But so after living here, I got my union card. And I was very lucky to get it the way I did because it was offered to me through a role. And then it just kind of opened up the door.
What was that one?
I did a production of A Christmas Carol.
Oh, nice.
It's a musical production at a theater called North Shore Music Theater. It's in Beverly, Massachusetts. And it's a theater in the round, which means it's a circular stage and there's seats all around you. And I was a dancer track in that show, more so like a tumbler. So the gymnastics came back to help me out.
Yeah.
Actually.
You say a dancer track?
Yeah, so a track meaning my part in the show, my role, a dancer role.
Gotcha.
So I was tumbling the whole time.
I learned a new term today, just so you know, a dancer track. I've never heard that before.
Yeah. So yeah, it was crazy, but because the role was on stage a lot, it was deemed a principal role, and because it was a principal role, it had to be a union contract. So they're like, if you want to take this show, you just would also have to join the union. So it was again one of those things of I'll never get an opportunity like that again to just have it handed to me essentially. So I was very lucky, and I got to do that, and there just kind of took off from there, and then just auditioned and worked more places. And when I joined the union, I was still only 23, so I knew I was young. And when you join the union, it really puts you in a different talent pool because of who has worked a lot. And you're now in the same pool as people who are consistently on Broadway. And so or working regionally all the time. So you have to remember, like, when you take it, you're kind of starting over almost, of being like, all right, let me reintroduce myself to the industry heads and these casting teams.
So it's like
directors.
going off to college. You're a freshman in college again. Now you're at the union. You now have to have a reset your mind to the fact that I'm the worst one in the room. Probably. Let's do this all over again.
A little bit, yeah. And so I took it knowing that, you know, I might work less consistently, but the work I'll do will be a caliber that is something that I'm really proud of, and I'll get paid a little bit better, and my housing will be provided, and it'll be, you know, there's a lot of benefits to being in the union. So that's what I did, and then I just kind of kept working regionally, and now here we are, still, you know, working regionally. But
You're doing something right now. I just saw you on Facebook. You just posted you're doing something at the Muni Theater.
What's that?
Yeah. So I just finished that, actually.
What's that? We looked it up, Ron. You know we did.
Yeah.
He's trying to be all coy over there. We saw this thing. It's a huge theater.
It's a huge thing.
It's like you're opening up for Cher or something. You know, I was like, whoa.
It feels like that too. So yeah, that is definitely, if I hadn't said 42nd Street was what I'm most proud of, then I would say the Muni is definitely a close second, because it was truly unlike any experience ever. I've worked at another really great outdoor theater out in Utah called Tuacahn, and
Are you
that's
still
also
at the Muni right now, though?
No, I'm back in New York now.
Oh, okay. Sorry, yeah, you said you're in New York. So you did the Muni. For how long were you there?
We were only there for about 2.5, 3 weeks.
Oh,
it's a really quick process.
Okay, because so by the time I saw it, you were already like halfway through, probably, after I started spying on you on Facebook.
Yeah.
And then Ron and I sat in my office and we looked at pictures of the Muni, and we're like, holy smokes, look at this place.
It's huge.
I did not realize what that was.
How many seats are you talking?
11,000.
11,000 seats. Outdoors.
Okay, yeah, that's bigger than I even thought it was.
It's outdoors, and is it hot there?
It's outdoors, yeah. It was, yes, it was very hot.
Where is it? St. Louis. It's in St. Louis. That's right.
Yes. So true Midwest humidity in the dead of July. Let me tell you
that was the furthest west you'd ever been with St. Louis, and it all comes full circle.
That's right. Exactly.
Midwest humidity in July. Outdoors.
Yeah, when I saw the pictures, I was fairly impressed, and I did see how big it was, and I thought, man, he's playing in a football stadium. What is going on here?
And what was the show you were doing there?
I did Chess the musical.
Oh, that's right. That's right. And you had a nobody cast?
Yeah, there was nobody good in that show.
Not quite a nobody cast.
No, tell us about the cast.
The cast was, just beyond. So we had Jessica Vosk was playing Florence. The hit song from the show is Nobody's on Nobody's Side, and that's the song that she sang. And she was phenomenal. She played Elphaba on tour and on Broadway. Wicked. And then we had John Riddle playing Anatoly, and he sings Anthem, who, if you know Chess and you know the song Anthem.
I do, yes.
That Josh Groban sang, so he played that role. But John Riddle played it at the Muni, and he was, he was the original Hans in Frozen, and he was the last Raoul in Phantom of the Opera on Broadway.
Wow. So he was way better than Josh Grogan.
Yeah.
Oh, gosh. Yeah. Oh,
not even close.
He was phenomenal. And then we had Jared Spector, who was, he's been in everything. He was in Jersey Boys on Broadway. He's in Beautiful. He's done so much. He played Freddie, and he was phenomenal. And then we had Taylor Louderman play Svetlana, who was also...
Who was that? Sorry?
Nominated for Mean Girls. What's that?
Who was that?
Taylor Louderman is her name.
Oh, yes. I know that person. And then there was Brady Miller. Brady Miller was in the show. He's from 42nd Street.
Yeah.
Oh, my gosh. You know him, right? Yeah.
Yeah,
he was principal dancer.
And those were just... and those were just the four leads. There were also still some prolific Broadway performers in our cast, and it was truly just quite the experience. And the directors were great, and so also this was my first time swinging, so that was a whole new
what's swing like
thing.
So swinging, you have to know like every character. I mean,
so typically the swings cover all of the ensemble tracks, and sometimes there's multiple swings, sometimes there's just one female, one male. And that was the case in ours. It was me and then my friend Emily were the two swings. So she covered all the ensemble women and I covered all the ensemble men. So I covered 12 people. So that meant I had to know 12 different
12 parts. You had to know
roles.
the Colonel Mustard and the Professor Plum, and you had to know all those parts, huh?
Yep.
Man,
So
don't
it
mix
was
up your
learning-
colors.
Now
Exactly. It was learning choreography, but then also learning how to do it on the other side of the stage and reverse it.
Oh my
Or like chess is really hard too because it's a score that is almost completely sung through, and the music is really, really challenging. I don't know if you've ever listened to it all the way through, but it's tough. And there's a lot of ensemble featured vocals, so like there were solos that I would have to like be prepared to sing, and it was a lot. It was
knowing that many parts, like, oh, that's me. I'm supposed to sing.
Exactly.
Just sing everything. Just sing everything all the time. And if they turn your microphone on, then that's you. Right? That's what I'd be like.
Exactly.
Like, is it my turn? I'm just singing anyway.
And that's it was a learning process, and it was learning how to flex an entirely new muscle and like a new part of my brain. But having done it now, I'm like, oh God, I kind of love doing that. I would love to do
And the pay's better?
Yeah, it pays a little. There's a little bump, you know,
Yeah,
to get
little bump being
you
in
have
the
to do a little bit of extra work, but
Nice.
it's definitely, you know, everyone's appreciative of their swings and their understudies. I've understudied a lot, so this was basically just understudying times 12.
Yeah, understudying everybody, it sounds like, yeah.
So this is my son Tyler and Maddie, good friends of yours. This is what they said. They said the Muni is Broadway outside of Broadway.
Correct.
They said it's where Broadway stars go to play.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, and that's
nice.
very true. It's amazing because it is such a quick process. So in a way, it is still true like summer stock, because they're about to open their 5th show of the season, I believe. They just closed Little Shop of Horrors, and they're about to open Rent. And then after Rent, they're doing Sister Act, and that's the end of their season. But they've already done 5 shows leading up to that. So it's a very down and dirty, fast and furious process, and you really are working 10 to 6 every day outdoors learning this show. But it's a fast and quick process, so that's, you know, a way that they can draw in all of these big names, because people can say, oh, I can go to St. Louis for 3 weeks.
Yeah, you go there for 3 weeks, then you're back in New York City again.
Exactly. So it's pretty incredible, and the talent they have is just unbelievable, but then also the space is unbelievable. And oh my gosh, we had like our chess orchestra was 28 pieces, which is huge. I think right now the biggest on Broadway might be 30 for Sweeney Todd, I think. So it's just unbelievable, like what that place can do. And so, yeah, it was truly just every day I woke up pinching myself, like, I cannot believe I'm here, because it is so many people's dream. And so the fact that I got to live it just for a glimpse of time, and I didn't even perform. I didn't ever get to go on as a swing. I was prepared to, but I never had to because it's so quick. But,
yeah, because it's only a 2-3 week span, and everybody stayed healthy. Darn it! I mean, yay!
yes.
Yeah, well, geez,
exactly.
How did we even manage to get you on? You sound like one of the most busiest person around,
and about to be more busy. Because Tyler and Maddie said he's playing at Muni with these people. This is his big break. He's made it. That's what they said, and they said it couldn't have happened to a nicer guy.
Oh my God. That's gonna make me cry now.
See, you're trying. That's our goal. Make everybody cry. Yeah, that's what we're doing.
So yeah, this was your big break.
In a way, yeah. You know, I got to really work with some people who I think will, you know, forever now be supporters of me, and like, it was just truly a lesson in what it is to be a professional. And I think talent, you know, matters so much, but I think more so, and like, I'll go back to Northern sometimes and even tell students this, like, what matters most in this industry is just being kind and so gracious for every opportunity you're given. Because you never know who knows you or who's going to ask about you or who knows people that you know. Like I said, like, I would do one show and from one person automatically know 10 more people just because I know who that one person is. So I think just being kind and being gracious will take you such a long way. And I think working at the Muni was insane and an opportunity that I will always be grateful for, because yes, it was probably a big, you know, door to open a lot of opportunities now going forward. But in a way, it still felt, you know, like working at any other place. And I think I love working in regional theaters because it's as big as the Muni with 11,000 seats, or as small as this other place that I worked called the Little Theater on the Square in Sullivan, Illinois, that probably seats 250 people maybe. It's a family and it's a community, and it's it's still true today what I felt when I was 10 doing Shenandoah. Like, awesome. I do this because I love the people that I get to meet, and it makes it even harder when the show's over because it's just another wonderful addition to my life, So
dang, dude, I can't wait to meet you. Seriously, I think Tyler and Maddie are right. Couldn't happen to a nicer guy. Sounds like you are a wonderful person. I can't believe you've been talking to us forever. And I really appreciate that.
I'm talking your ear off. I'm sorry.
No, it's good. No, I this is not we can talk longer. I just know you just sound like you got a life outside of talking to two old guys in a podcast. So I appreciate you taking the time.
No. I did make sure to pour myself a nice glass of bourbon just to be here. Like I'm there in spirit, but I'm enjoying
nice. Yeah.
Hang out in my apartment and just talk, it's nice. It's great.
Oh man. Well, I wish nothing but the best. Everything and keep us, I'm stalking you on Facebook and Instagram. So anytime there's something you post, you might see a little message from me and be like, oh, I remember talking to that dork.
We've got a lot of pictures, pictures of you on Facebook from my son's page. So
yeah.
Well, maybe some of those were not the most.
No, some of them were sketchy. Yes.
I'm sure you also heard a lot of stories about the antics that Tyler and I would get into with our friends. Because oh my goodness, it was crazy.
Yeah.
There was a lot. I've even seen a couple pictures. Ron was nice enough to pull up pictures so I could see what you look like. So I have a mental image of what what you were looking like beforehand before we did all of this. So. All right. Well, again, I want to thank you for coming on, spending the time with us, chatting with us, telling us about your whole life and how you got into this, and hopefully everything keeps going.
Well, thank you. It's my pleasure to talk, and thank you for doing this podcast. Like you said, to give a message truly to everyone in the area who might listen that like it is a very feasible, very realistic career path because it's the best. That's why I do it.
All right. Thank you, man.
Yeah, thank you. Have a great night, y'all.
Yeah, bye.
Yep, bye.
Oh, y'all. He threw an Ohio in there.
Yeah, right.
All right, bye.
Good one, y'all.